Hello, NAWA, Florida fellow artists. Thank you for tuning in today, December the 4th, 2024. This is our last workshop presentation for the year. And today we are elated to introduce Susan Irish. She is an international American abstract painter and environmental advocate, known for her bold and energetic scene of nature. Each of her distinctly frenetic landscapes carries subtle signs of creeping industrial blight. To appreciate their beauty is to grapple with one's own role in their decay. Susan works primarily in oil and cold wax. She believes art making is integral to the human spirit and should be fostered and celebrated. Much of her early art life called her to the classroom as a public school art teacher, private portfolio prep for gifted students, coaching adults, and working with students on the spectrum. That's very special. Susan was the founder and curator of Fabulon, a center for art and education in Charleston, South Carolina. In 2018, Susan was inducted into the National Association of Women Artists. She's an internationally known and award-winning artist. Her work has been exhibited in Ireland, Maine, Massachusetts, New York, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, and California. She's got paintings in the permanent collection with the Pinnacle Financial Partners, South Carolina, and she was the Fabulon Gallerist, which she's retired from now. I believe our gallery has closed, so we'll hear more from her. Thank you. Susan, please. We welcome you.
Yes, thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I'll take some questions in the middle and we'll take questions at the end. And we will start with the shared screen now. So I won't be able to see you, but you can see my screen now, yes?
You're good.
Okay, good. So this is a talk about what your gallerist wants you to know.
Just a minute. I'm not seeing your screen. You're gonna have to hit the.
You're not sharing screen. We just see you.
Yeah.
Okay, we should be. Let's try this one more time.
Okay, it looks like you're getting ready to share. Be there in a second.
How's that?
Perfect. Good to go.
Perfect. Okay, so I want to talk about relationship building because that's really what I need you to know about the gallery artist relationship. So as you were introduced to me, I am an abstract painter. And when I didn't get a great response to my artwork in the Charleston area, when I moved here from Maine, I said, I'm going to start my own gallery. Just, that's a good idea. Just bring the gallery to me. So I started this gallery that was also a center for education. I taught kids, I taught adults. We had all kinds of interesting shows. And at that time, my business plan wasn't really well received because the galleries in Charleston had a certain aesthetic to them. And I was out in the suburbs. I was letting kids in the gallery. And oh my gosh, we were going to do some crafts. So that just didn't go over super, super well. But it took off. It did really, really well. We had a full parking lot. We had shows on how artists respond to racism. We had students shows. We had photography shows. It was really happening. This was once an old grocery store in the suburbs of Charleston. It was a karate studio before I got it. I think at one point it was at wine and design kind of place. So we classied it all up, did a lot of things to it. And I met some amazing people, absolutely amazing people. The lovely lady to my left is my dear friend, Laura McCrae Hitchcock. And the beautiful woman in purple is Mariel Edge, who is the president of the South Carolina chapter now. And there's some guys in there too, but let's talk about the women. So I met these fabulous people. I was very happy to have the association with them and still retain that now. That to me is really paramount. We made some headway. Even the downtown galleries were trying to copy our idea, and suddenly they're doing yoga in the gallery and they're having classes and guest speakers and things. So I wasn't so far off the mark. We sat down to do some branding and our plan for the new year when FedEx came in and said, "You've been evicted from the building." The landlord sold it, and that was the end of that. So at that time, I was juried into NAWA, and I got 2 years to work in my studio all by myself. It was really fabulous. And then pandemic came. So if I win the lottery, maybe I'll open another gallery. I don't play the lottery, so it's probably not going to happen real soon, but it is still a little fantasy in the back of my mind. And I wanted to do this talk today because I have a lot to say about it still. And I think NAWA is one of the best things that happened to me and the people that I've met here. So I want to share some of that with you because to me, it's all kind of tied together. So the big question, before we talk too much about galleries, is what is the future of the gallery? Is there a place in the art world for galleries? The traditional brick and mortar gallery. We have the ability for e-commerce now, which didn't happen in the early days, even in the later days of NAWA. We have sites like Etsy and Society6 where you can make your own art on anything. And then there's all of these platforms like Artwork Archives, Art Cloud, Artist Networks, yada, yada, yada. There's a million of them. And then we have the fabulous organization of NAWA. So what is the role of the traditional gallery? That's going to be a perpetual question. And the art world is bananas. So it's ever changing. I mean, hello. The next big question is, are you ready? Are you ready for a gallery? Are you ready for a professional career in art? You're already in NAWA, so that's probably yes, but are you really ready? These will be expectations, that body of work, a mission, your artist statement and your bio, because those are two different things, a website, a business card, social media, and a documented inventory. So basically what I'm saying here is you need to be a professional. You need to have your ducks in a row. You need to have a suitcase packed with things ready to go. If you are going to entertain the idea of going to a studio or to a gallery, leaving your studio and going to a gallery, you need to have all these things. They're going to ask you for that. This is my inventory right now. It's a Word document with a grid on it, and I can fill it in and shift it in anytime I want to. I used more the elaborate pay versions of it, but this is just cut and paste. I can print it if I want to. And then if I need to do a show and I need a tear sheet for the show, I can print it and I can drop and drag whatever I need to do for this. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. And I have a website, and I spent a lot of money on my website, and I wanted to curate a gallery feeling. And I might have overdone it a little bit. The jury's still out on that. But a business card is super important. Again, it can be something that's branded, or it can be something you put together from one of the online venues. You just need to be able to hand something to somebody that says, here I am, here's my contact information. I like to practice and imagine those little encounters. You meet somebody somewhere. Nobody wants to look on your phone. Nobody wants to look on your iPad. Nobody wants to write something down anymore. Maybe if you've got a QR code, that's really great. Maybe if your phone talks to their phone. But most of us are of a different generation where we don't really love all that technology, as great as it is. So a good old-fashioned business card is still an industry standard. How elaborate, that's up to you. So put yourself in that role playing of, hey, I'm going to a gallery and what do I need? What are they going to ask of me? And we'll come back to this again too. So the next big question is why? Why do you want to be in a gallery? The four most common answers are up here, but here's where you can unmute yourself and tell me if there's something else that called you to this meeting today that makes you wonder, is a gallery right for me, and why, and what you think you're going to get from it. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Please.
Well, I think, go ahead, Roberta.
No, I was just going to remind people, please unmute to talk.
So I think that if you have a place where you know you're exhibiting and people know who you are, that's already marketing, and that's a way to be out there. So I think that's very important. And as you say, validation that you are considered a professional artist who is selling on a regular basis, who will probably have collectionists coming back. So I think it's wonderful to have that. It provides you clout because then people feel confident. Oh, this artist is already established through a gallery, so there's value, and we feel we can trust this as a prestigious artist who will possibly continue creating. So I think it's a win-win situation to have a gallery, even though you have to cut their whatever share they want to receive. And it's worth it because they have to pay for the low.
Before you go into the money part, hold on to that thought, because the money always scares people. Don't go into the money yet.
Okay,
Let's stay at that really happy place right now, because you said some really fabulous words. Did anybody have any other words to add to that?
I have. I thought also it seems easier to present your artwork with the exposure, because as a third party versus myself, I feel like sometimes you need to be removed from it, and it actually gives the I don't know, the person who's looking at the art not as intimidated. So I like the idea of showing it through somebody else and having them present it sometimes, and then bringing me in later to talk about it. But I think that sometimes that is very intimidating for a lot of people when they first meet the artist. So I think that I would like to have the exposure of a gallery. There are people coming in, and then I can then talk about it later.
I was going to say, I was just going to say, one other thing is that I love the idea of exposure, because I used to take people on like little tours of New York City a lot, and they were artists friends, and there's no way that they wanted to be seen. Nobody in the gallery wanted to see them. If I kind of pretended to be their representative, which I kind of did, just it got them enough in the door that they actually paid attention to who I was actually bringing into the gallery. And it's the most ridiculous thing, but NAWA does that for us. By going through NAWA, if we don't have a gallery, we have still the exposure you're talking about, but it's gone through NAWA, because like you said, you had to open a gallery, and that takes, cojones. That's really great that you did that. It takes a lot of to get over that and say, I don't care what people are saying. I'm going to do it anyway. And I'd love to see you win that lottery and do it again.
I'll let you know.
I believe that for me and many artists, we only want to do the creative part. We don't want to deal with money. And therefore, for me, it would be amazing not to worry about that aspect at all. Just to focus on my creativity, and to, on occasion, being out there when there's an opening, there's a special fair that you want to attend. So I think it's the utmost situation. I would love it.
How do you feel about, I've heard this from other galleries also, is how do you feel about the fact that I've heard galleries say, well, we only want you if you could produce 200 pieces a year. Because what they're looking for is low cost
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that too.
Okay,
We'll get to that too, because those are all very, very valid things.
Okay.
I have a why. I have a why I'd like to add.
Yes.
I have never had a situation where I didn't grow by having an exhibition that a different curator installed and envisioned with my work. So I think having that curator's eye on your work can help you be a better artist for the work that comes after that exhibition.
Yeah. So some of the words that I'm hearing are the curator's eye, the other perspective, the value, the clout, the confidence, the trust, the prestige, the easy of it, the exposure, the separation from the business end of it, representation, time in the studio so that you can pursue the creativity, and
Dame un lapicero, porfa. No escribe mis lapiceros.
and a foot in the door. That's so some of those are interchangeable with some of the words that I put up here. So let's unpack some of this. Let's talk about some of these different parts. The why you want to be in a gallery will inform what you present to the gallery, and the why will help answer some of the other questions and make the commissions and those parts be a little easier too. So we'll come back to the why a few times too. So let's talk about the validation a little bit. It's very hard to be an artist. It's a great job, but it's really hard. And we put ourselves out there and people don't always get what we do. And somehow being able to say you're related to a gallery takes a lot of that bonus off of you, and it means you're somebody. If you're a dentist, you go to an office every day, nobody questions what you do. But when you're an artist that stays home in their studio, I don't understand what I do. So the validation part is very, very common. And there's that mystique in the art world that if you're not in a gallery, you're not legit. The exposure is really interesting too, because people come to galleries, hopefully they always will, and they'll want to see art in person, because you can expose yourself all you want on the internet, literally, figuratively, but to have a gallery gives it a little bit more credibility to the exposure. And you might start small and work your way up to other galleries and get more well-known, get discovered by another gallery because you were in the first gallery. And then there's the financial support.
Wait a minute, Susan, what about the cooperative galleries?
Yeah, we're going to talk about all the different types of galleries in a few minutes.
Okay.
So we're just talking about the gallery as this mystique of a place where you bring your art so that it comes out of your studio closet. So there was a time when I needed to make money off my art. And there was times when I didn't always. There were times when I couldn't try and make money off of my art because it was impacting the art that I made. So it's not unlikely that you could be self-sustaining in your art. It's not a possible dream. There are a lot of people that do that. But how and why? Maybe it's a gallery. Maybe it's not. Maybe the gallery works for you and not for somebody else. Think about that, and we'll come back to that too. The sisterhood part of being in a gallery. For me, on a personal level, I found my sisterhood through NAWA. I met women artists. We speak the same language. We formed some bonds. I started with the sisters that I met in my gallery, and it blossomed from there. I did not put this on the top of your list of why you wanted to be in a gallery. Also, going backwards, financial support is not going to be the be-all and end-all of the gallery. Exposure, and we get some of that from NAWA too, which is great, and the validation. Just the fact that you got juried into NAWA is a pretty big deal. So don't lose sight of those things, my sisters. So is a gallery the best way to achieve those goals? That's another big question. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'm going to pose a lot of questions out here. We're not going to have time to discuss them all, and we're not going to have answers to them all. I want you to take them with you and think about them. But I've been putting pictures of some of my own artwork, and you have noticed I've put some pictures of other people's artwork. There's Denise right there. And I chose a semi-art piece up here. This is my dear friend Fran Gardner's book. And is the gallery the best way to achieve your goals? Read this book and it will help you with that. Also, the title is fabulous because artists will always find a way. You will always find a way to do what you want to do and to make something happen that's right for you. You need to ask yourself the big questions. So if a gallery is right for you, then what do you do? If then. So here's where we go. Not all galleries are the same. You need to find the one that fits you. So if you know your why, then you need to start figuring out the gallery. There are many different types of galleries, and sometimes the names have changed. Can you all see that whole screen? And see all the, it's a lot of writing, and I'm not going to read the whole screen, but everybody thinks of a gallery is that place in New York City where there's somebody with very high heels welcomes you at the door and makes you feel like you don't understand anything in there. I think that's a trope, and there are other galleries that are very welcoming and very educational and really in love with the art and want to share it with the world. I think that's true. There's owner-operated galleries, which used to be called the vanity gallery, which is a terrible thing. And so it's a horrible word to have associated with it because maybe we don't say this out loud or know it, but we all have a little tiny smidge of that vanity in there. We have to. Vanity is not a great word. I say audacity. When you put your heart and soul on a piece of canvas and present it to the world, that takes all the body parts, Roberta said, and then some. It's vanity gallery. I wish they would stop using that word, because if I have enough money when I win the lottery, I might have two galleries, and one of them might have my name on it. And why not? Why not? It would be my time and I could do that. The collective is a fabulous idea where, and my friend Laura had a collective type gallery. There were 5 women. They pooled their money together. They were on the board. They made the decisions together. They had occasional shows where they welcomed other people in, but it was primarily a 5-person vanity gallery. And that was really great. It works for some people. There is a gallery a couple galleries in Florida that I really like that exemplify some of these. And I'll go through the whole list and then I'll go back to them. The Art Guild, a lot of towns have an art guild. Charleston has an art guild, and anybody can come to the art guild meetings. They have open calls where you can bring your art and they'll judge it for you, but they're membership driven. They want you to be a member. It's not like the old guilds where you had to be juried in and then they promoted you. It relies a lot on volunteerism, and they're kind of changing their model now too, where you could pay to display. And then you get to the cooperatives, which are similar to all the above. And oftentimes you pay for the wall space, or there's some kind of fee structure involved. And I think what we're seeing happening now are these hybrid combinations, because there are no rules. You have to follow the business rules and the tax rules and the zoning rules, but there are no rules of who can call themselves a gallery or what kind of degree or experience you have. So there are the different varieties. I have a lot of experience with the New Smyrna Beach area, and there's Arts on Douglas, which is, anybody familiar with that gallery there? Yeah, so that gallery was started by, correct me if I'm wrong, Fran, by the Atlanta Center for the Arts founder. So it's got a variety of artists in there and traveling shows, and they have a mission to be educational. And that's a fabulous kind of gallery if you're looking for exposure and sisterhood, education parts of it.
They also, Susan, will only accept Florida artists. So they're very much about promoting their state artists.
Yeah. And so there are other galleries like that in other states and other places, and you can keep that research in mind. So again, know your gallery. You need to research, and you need to find a gallery that has, find what the criteria of each gallery is. So again, it's about relationship building. You need to be professional, professional, professional. You need to be honest, and it needs to be reciprocal. Those are the three big caveats for me. But you want it to be mutually beneficial. There's a thought here that the galleries have all the power. I don't think that, sorry, something just happened here. Sorry, I'm gonna skip ahead here. I got out of order. Out of order. Flash my whole life right here. There's a mystique with the gallery too, that they have all the power. They don't necessarily. Granted, you could walk into a gallery and say, I want to be in your gallery, and they could say no. But if you don't walk into the gallery, you'll never know. Know what you want and ask for it. That is my mission in life now, to find out what I want and ask for it. It's how I claim my power, how I, as a woman in business, I know my rights and I own my responsibilities. And if I have that in the back of my mind, then it helps me to claim what's mine, to stand up for myself. I use this philosophy throughout my business. I used it raising my children. I used it in my interactions with my friends. But until I read Fran's book and worked with her on a retreat, did I realize that this could cross over into my art life. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Listen to the feedback. If you're talking with people, you're going to a gallery, listen to the feedback. You may not hear what you want to hear, but the feedback is subjective, but it's also helpful. So, rights, responsibilities. You have a right to listen, a right to seek feedback, but you also have a responsibility to listen. The artist has rights for professionalism. You can expect to be professional, to have opportunities, to have display space, that the gallery will be transparent, that they will promote you, and that you will be compensated for your work. The artist has a responsibility to be professional, to have a body of work, and we'll talk about that more, to create consistent quality of work, to be transparent, to promote, and to be compensated for the work. So there are some crossovers here. There's some repetition here, because your right is also your responsibility. Your responsibility is also your right when you think about it this way. So you have a gallery relationship, and they need to get paid for what they do. It's a business transaction, so they need to get paid. I'm not saying that some of the commissions out there are fair or reasonable or easy to swallow. They hurt a bit, but it takes money to make money. It takes money to do what they do. Even I was in a low rent district and it still was pretty high because it was Charleston, and the electricity and the air conditioning and the taxes. So it adds up. That's got to be covered somehow, somewhere. Above all, you need to be professional. And I had shows for artists. I had solo shows for artists. I did all the promotion. It would have been nice if some of them shared on their social media. There was an expectation for that, but sometimes they don't always promote it. I think we see that in NAWA sometimes too, and we're all trying to work to make that easier, how you can share things when there's a show going on. But there's got to be that cross promotion. The part that gets a lot of people is that consistent body of art. So I had the gallery of artists. I brought her in because she made these hyper realistic, oversized flowers. That's what she was getting known for. That's what she was doing. That's what I brought her in for. And then one day she brings in, I forget, we're getting recorded. She brings in some paintings that were not of the same caliber. That's a nice way to say it. They were not the same caliber. They were not of the same quality. And I said that I would not show these. She was very hurt, very insulted. And I said it as nice as I could. But they weren't what she came to me with. They weren't of the same consistency of what she had and what she needed to make some money. The why she came to me was she wanted some exposure. She wanted a foot in the door in a gallery. And then suddenly she changed to the money and she wanted to make some quick sales. Now, the difference in my gallery was that I had opportunities for quick sales. Whenever we did a show, we would have a wall with smaller pieces with a different price tag. We would have a holiday show with the smaller pieces for sale. At that time, we would have, every time I had a show about somebody else, I gave the artists opportunity to come and refresh their spaces and areas and bring something new in or something that was sort of adjacent to the theme of the artist so people could see, and ask them to be at the gallery, even though it wasn't their show. So again, the promotion. So there were lots of opportunities for her to make art in other, to make money in other ways, but to suddenly bring in a whole nother body of work. Now, an artist that I had in that gallery as well can do anything, makes everything. The paintings that she was juried into the show with were portraits of people that tell stories. That's what got hung on the wall. But then she also has this amazing ability to do a pet portrait. That's fabulous. I'm not going to hang those on the wall, but she would come in and teach classes. There's the hook. There's where it works. And the consistency of the art and having that body of work is really important. So your why, again, is going to inform what you present to the gallery. And be consistent about that. Be transparent about that. Be professional about that. And you can also promote what you want on Instagram and Facebook for the other side jobs separate from the gallery. So here are the rights and responsibilities of the gallery. Not all of them, but some really important ones. And look, some of them are the same things. So the two different ones on here are to advocate. We always have to advocate for ourselves as artists, but if you're in a gallery interaction, you're expecting them to advocate, to promote you, to talk about you, to show you. An artist friend of mine disengaged her relationship with a gallery because stuff was leaning up against the wall on the floor. Nobody puts baby in the corner. So the gallerist's job is to engage with the potential buyers, to do all those parts you don't want to do, those parts that put you too close to the artwork. please, please, please like me, please, please, please buy me, please, please, please give me money. Nobody really wants to say that. That's why we have an intermediary. That's why the internet, in my opinion, has taken off too, because there's cyberspace in between the two of us and it's a transaction. How many people go on Amazon and just buy a whole bunch of stuff because it's easy? So the internet has its place and it might be right for you. It might be right for you if you like to load all that stuff into the internet, or it might be the place where you spend your money that you would be spending on commission to hire somebody like a teenager even to load some of that in, or to sign up for some of those galleries online galleries that promote your work for you. They're not going to engage with the potential buyers. It's a platform. So again, the three same things at the top: compensation, professionalism, promotion. I once walked into a gallery and the woman was eating her lunch in the gallery. And I'm not saying I never sat in the back room and chugged my lunch, but I didn't answer the door with my lunch in my hand. So that was an off for me. The advocating is the biggest piece. And again, I think NAWA does a really good job about that. So keep that in mind. The advocating part is a two-way street. They need to advocate for you. You need to advocate for them as well. That cross promotion and showing up and being present in the gallery, because the artist that's in the gallery for the solo show or the opening at that night is going to have a lot of attention. But this is a time where you can just chat too with the artist. It's a really missed opportunity to be in the gallery at the same time and talk about that other artist's work. And then they understand that you are, one, a nice person, that you lift up your sister, that you are educated about the art, that you can talk about the art. Ooh, it's also a good way to practice talking about art when you're talking about somebody else's art. Then you say, let me show you my art. Because we don't know how to talk about art as much as we should. And the general public knows even less. So the more that you can practice and have this conversation and advocate. And then there's that nasty word. Commission, commission, commission. So commission is a necessary evil of the gallery. It's what pays the bills. It's what keeps the lights on. It's what pays for the advertising. This artist said she was going to have artwork at a special show somewhere else. And should she jack up her prices because it was going to be downtown instead of here? Well, it didn't get better when it crossed the bridge into Charleston. So that's a hard one, because what is she really asking and what is she really saying? My question is, what are you getting from it? Are they advocating for you? Are they giving you more promotion? Do they have a huge mailing list? So when you are looking for a gallery, have a list of what you want in that gallery. Have a list of questions to ask. What is the commission? What is my responsibility? What are my rights here? What are your expectations of me? And see, are you getting the best bang for your buck in the commission? It's a business. So every business has a product, every product or a service, every product and service has a cost to produce. And then there's a cost of doing business. You need to factor those things in. You need to factor the shipping to go to a show into your project so that you're not feeling cheated at the end. Oh my gosh, I just put this show, I got accepted to a show, I'm really excited about it. Now it's going to cost me $100 to ship it. That's part of the cost. Those are the parts you should be factoring into your final calculation, just like it's doing business. And take the commission concept off the table and think about, you want to be paid for what you do just as much as the gallery does. If it's exorbitant, then it's not the gallery for you. If you get into one of the galleries where the price is so high, you should be having artwork fly off the wall, and then it doesn't hurt as much. Get a contract. Get it in writing. I cannot say this enough. Get it in writing, so that I think that one of my favorite TV shows says that friendship agreement between all the nerdy guys that live together. And they always refer back to that friendship agreement. It's part of our friendship agreement. It's part of our friendship agreement. So there's never an argument that can't be resolved. Get it in writing. Have an agreement. I've seen people in other galleries lose their friendships because they started putting in that commission. They started putting in that feelings of I thought this and you thought that. If it's in writing and you sign on it, be professional. And do it like the men do. The men don't quarrel over this. The men don't worry about this. Get it in writing, protect yourself. It's being professional. Being professional is being ethical. So here's the problem with some of the online places, the galleries, is we're feeling like something wasn't right. Something was taken from us. It takes a lot of self-examination. It takes a lot of it brings you back to the why, and it brings you back to the are you ready? I would love to be able to tell you a fairy tale story that you're going to find the right gallery for you. It's going to be a perfect fit and you're going to live happily ever after. It's not always that way, but at least you'll know that you had your ducks in a row, came off like a professional. You can't change the other people, but you can know that you did what you were supposed to do. So if you think you're ready and you know you've done your research, you've visited lots of galleries, you go when they're busy, you go when they're not busy, you're observant and you ask questions, make notes, and go to a lot of galleries, talk to other artists that are there, see what they say. Don't cold call. So I was the only one in my gallery, and I'm cleaning the toilets and setting up for the classes and changing the artwork around. I don't have time to have someone walk in and say, hey, would you look at these pictures on my phone? Long gone are the days when you walked in with your portfolio case and showed artwork. Ask about the procedures. Ask if they're taking new artists. Ask for the appointment. Typically, they're going to want to look at your website first. So you've got to be ready. Have your best work out there. They're going to go to your website first. They're going to look at you silently without you in the room. They're going to see your social media. Do you have some good engagement? Are you consistent with your social media? They're going to interview you without you even being in the room before you ever come into the room. They're going to want to see that you're ready. They're going to want to see that you have some presence. They want to see that you're bringing something to the gallery besides the pretty pictures. You have to have something value added. We all know you're fabulous. We all know that you've got value added, but you need to express that to them. And they're going to see that from your social media, and write a letter to them. If you go to them and ask them what their policy is and they say, send us a note, or they say, make an appointment, pack that letter with your mission, your contacts, your social media, and they're going to look at you. You may not hear for a year, because if they're not taking any new people, they don't want to lose out on you, but they also are good. They don't want to miss on the next great buzz, but they also don't want to be inundated with people. I know an artist who sent out postcards to every show, to a show she was going to, every gallery in Charleston. Heard nothing for a year, and then she got an invite to come in and interview and was in the gallery the next day. So it can happen. Be patient. Be patient. Keep looking. Ask for the follow-up time. Ask for an appointment. When you get the appointment, Be professional. Show up on time, silence your cell phone, have your polished statement ready. So, questions?
Okay, everybody make sure that you unmute yourself when you want to talk. And I had a couple of I'll put this on standard showing. I had a couple of questions while you were talking. I was wondering, how did the galleries feel about artists selling in multiple platforms? Like such as you have the gallery who's representing you, but also selling your work on your own, working online, with organizations via NFTs.
So this goes to your contract. You have a contract with the gallery that you are showing XYZ pieces of artwork with them to be sold through them. It's often like a real estate transaction if you sell it 3 months after it was in the gallery, because sometimes it takes people time to make up their mind. Mm-hmm. Then that's a standard clause in a gallery transaction. Mm-hmm. It prevents people, and you have to ask yourself why these contracts exist, because somebody did something somewhere that ruined it for everybody. I had 2 artists stand in my gallery and make a trade. That cut me out of 2 commissions. Mm. I've been trying to sell that artwork for a month, and then they traded with each other.
I've had people apply my work before I even walked in the gallery. So the problem is that I guess then I had to give a commission and I lost it because it was less money to the person, before it got in. So you're right. A contract, you have to read it carefully.
You have to read the contract carefully. You have to be prepared for that. And if you have a large body of work, or even a body of work, you could always substitute something out and say, okay, I just sold this one before you answered me. They've already answered you. So again, here's a scenario. We had a show in South Carolina. The artist put something on social media that this piece is done, and I've entered it into a show. Somebody bought it.
Yeah.
The show hadn't even opened yet. Because she's a very ethical person and understands the business of art, she wrote NAWA a check and still put it in the show, not for sale. And when she got her payment from them, she wrote NAWA the percentage check, because that's what you should do. Think about it from the other point of view. It becomes much clearer if you think about it from your rights and your responsibilities, and if you were the gallerist, what would you want to have happen?
And the same thing happened, I was going to say, but it happened with NAWA. Theirs is on the date you sign it. So the moment you enter it, which could be a month prior, that's when you actually are liable to give them the commission. So you might think, oh, well, you're not showing it in the show yet, and you can pull it out like it's 2 months early. But if it's the contract is really, that's where I messed up early on.
Now, so a gallery has a show and somebody comes in and wants to buy a piece of your artwork and a piece of their artwork and a piece of another person's artwork and give me a package deal. Pays the commission on that. So I'm not part of that package deal. If the gallery needs to wheel and deal to make the sale, then they should take the cut, not the artist. But then that's where it gets kind of gray in the arts. Well, I really want to sell it. I really want to sell it. Well, what's your why? Is it to sell, or is it to get paid for what I did? So that's where the gallery needs to step up and say, okay, I've got a big group sale or a large commission opportunity. Well, they can take the cut out and give you your piece. Did I answer all of your questions?
One other question I had, unless anyone else has the question, I was going to say the majority of the galleries today I've seen are all pay to display. Are there any that you know of that aren't still doing that? I mean, where you could just go in there and they'll work on commission? Because I haven't seen it.
So it does exist. I don't know Florida as well. There are, again, why do some of these things exist? Because they can, or because somebody made it difficult and we're trying to find ways to make it better. Some artists don't need to pay to play. Some do. Some galleries, if you're trying to just get started and get that exposure, it's a great way. Go to an artist guild. go to a collective and that doesn't want you necessarily to be on the board or to be part of the group, but you could be an exhibiting artist and you pay for a certain amount of wall space. If you're paying for, 4 feet by 8 feet, make sure you use that 4 feet by 8 feet and make sure you get that 4 feet by 8 feet. But it's not the worst idea. If you're going just for the validation, then that might feel like, well, I'm paying to get professional, but everybody else has to pay their dues some way. And so it's not the worst case scenario. I think it's got a lot of merit, and check it out to see if it's right for you. Some places do it better than others. But again, if you have a written contract, it's all spelled out and you can see ahead of time what you're getting yourself into.
I know libraries do that, but I was talking about regular galleries. So, yeah, I appreciate that. It's hard to find this.
So there's a controversy too. I hear this conversation a lot. Go to your local coffee shop, go to your local library, and put art on the wall. And does somebody go to your local coffee shop saying, I'm going to buy art? There's going to be artwork on the wall. My first show in Charleston was in a coffee shop, but it was a hip place where people came and spent all day doing work on their iPads. It got some exposure, but the owner of the coffee shop knew people would come in for the art if she had a show. And then if she had a show, people came in for the coffee because they said this is a hip place to be. You can't just stick art on the wall. Ask for a show. They may not be able to do it if they work. This coffee shop closed at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock, they had an art show once every 6 weeks. She took a big commission. She was savvy. She knew the art world a little bit. Think about your why. Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to get exposure? And is that the best way to get that exposure?
So, Susan, I have a question. When I just was recently working with someone who told me a story about what happened with her, and I think a lot about this. She sent in a proposal for an exhibition and she got rejected. And I heard you say earlier in your presentation, when you rejected that person's work, that person got their feelings hurt. And when this friend of mine told me about this, I said, I understand that your feelings get hurt because your work is, comes from your soul. Of course, your feelings are going to get hurt to a degree, but also you are a professional. So let's look at this through a professional lens. Now, in that case, she was very fortunate that the rejection came with some whys, why they didn't take her work. She was very fortunate. I don't think that often happens. And she was able to really analyze what they were telling her and decide, did she still think this was a good fit? And had she maybe not done the things that she needed to do, or were there things that she could do that could make her chances better? So my question with that story is, she was fortunate enough to get that feedback about the why for the rejection. How do you feel as a gallerist if you rejected somebody and that artist came in and said, could you talk to me about this rejection?
I never had that experience, because if I rejected somebody, I gave them a why in the rejection letter, because I was on the other end of those rejection letters feeling, what did I do wrong? So I made that part of my solemn vow when I started the gallery, is that there would be feedback. Because I feel that's my responsibility as a gallerist. I'm not going to have that attitude that says you're not good enough for me, and it's not fair to anybody. Again, that takes time and that takes a commitment, and you can't control the other person, so you need to, as the artist, ask for the why, ask for the feedback. If they say, I don't have time for that, then there's your answer. If they say, oh, I hadn't thought about that, here's what I think. Now, what if they give you some feedback and you don't like it? Again, ask them another question, ask them to explain that, or step back and really think about it. I got rejected from a show and I thought my piece was fabulous. And then I went to see the artwork of another artist, and I stood there and had this epiphany, like, oh, this is the A game of that same theme. And now I see why my piece didn't get in. And instead of feeling bad, I went back to that piece and I'm starting to rip it apart and redo it, because I didn't get to ask the person why I didn't get in. I didn't get any feedback. It wasn't a venue where I could do that, but I still had it in the back of my mind. I went and looked at somebody else's art. So one of the best ways to get to know the galleries is to look at the art that's in there. Mm-hmm. If it's all coastal work and you do funky abstract, it's not going to be a fit. So, and you're not going to get the feedback if they don't even understand abstract art. Get in an abstract art place and people reject it there, then there's where you want to know the questions from, because you don't want an answer, I don't get abstract art, it's not our thing. You want to get the deeper answer.
Also, my other question is about the brick and mortar galleries, the traditional galleries. That is a format that has changed very little in the last 200 years, literally. This model of traditional galleries, it was established in the 1800s, and it's still there. And I don't know. I don't know that it's really working very well, because all you ever hear about in the art world is how many galleries are closing, and we all have friends who have had experiences in galleries. I had a show in a gallery in Asheville, and it closed during my show. So there's problem with that system, and I wonder. I mean, we're all very creative people. I don't think the internet is exactly the right answer to that, because that takes away that whole tactile experience. I just feel like there's something that we're missing. And I wonder if, as a gallerist, like, why does all the responsibility for the payment have to be on the artist? Why can't the people who are enjoying the art pay some fee to access it, just like you pay a fee to go to the movies, and all those movie tickets turn into profit and sales, and that goes to pay the people that were in the movie. So as a gallerist, do you think a system like that would work, or are we just so deeply ingrained that art's supposed to be free?
We tried that, by the way, as president, when I was president, we tried that for different shows, just to get people into the shows to see. The only way to make that work in the mentality of the people, the patrons, was if we said it was a donation to the venue, or if it's donation to some kind of organization that we're representing, or, whatever it was. But it had to be something more than just walking into a door of a gallery. Nobody wanted to do that. But it does work. It does absolutely work if it's saying that that money is being contributed to another reason, another cause. It does work.
It is proven that it can work. So how much time do we have left here?
We're good for another hour. I put you until 1:30.
Okay. So my dream gallery would be some of what I had, and the taglines under were attainable and accessible. I wanted it to be art for everybody. I wanted it to be affordable, but not with the word affordable because that has a connotation, right? Because art's like a gateway drug. Once you have a nice little piece of artwork that you bought for, you know, $200 at an art show or a craft show, and then you want better and you want more. We don't get the training to know what's better and more unless we go through that first door. We're taking these programs out of schools. I look at everything like an educator, and the education in art and the value on art is going away. and it's going to go away. It's going to get worse. Y'all in Florida, you know this. I don't need to tell you that. We need to advocate for the arts in general. We need to advocate for ourselves. We need to educate people on why art is a necessity. And the pandemic taught us that. And we are losing that. And the advent of AI making stuff, I think, is going to be a tipping point for people, because we're going to want so much computer generated text. Now people are going back to the trend of calligraphy, hand done wedding invitations, because everything's been so manufactured. Now they want bespoke. So I think there's going to be a pendulum to this. I think enough artists are going to get disenfranchised with the gallery system that hasn't changed, especially the women artists, because it was run by men. It is primarily run by men. Only 11% of the acquisitions for the museum last year were women artists. 11%. I'm no math whiz, but I know it's bigger on the men's side. So we want to see the women unite and do what the women in the early days of NAWA did, and say, we've had enough, and we're going to join together our forces and our resources, and we're going to form our own galleries and say, this is how we do it. Welcome into my gallery. Do you have any questions? Can I show you around? What would you like to see? I'm not going to give you a hard sale, like this is the up and coming person, you must get them now while they're cheap. But this is what good art is about. This is what to look for. Did you notice this in this painting? Hey, did you see that in this painting? Because I had kids in the classroom, the kids were really, and right in the gallery, the art tables were like right up in front. And I'd say, okay, let's think about color. What happens if you think about texture? Oh, look, there's a painting right there with it. And halfway through the course, the kids were telling me, oh, I need some more line like Hampton Bullfish uses in his pen drawings. So that was pretty exciting to see, because they were exposed to it. It was right there in front of them, not on a TV screen, not on an iPad, not AI generated. It was a real person. And the artists would walk in sometimes and talk to the kids. And I don't know as I have it in me to bring the classroom part back, but I definitely would do something with my sisters and get them together to share the time. I mean, in my fantasy, we're going to hire somebody to do all the dirty work, but it's going to have to be the collective idea. And there's nothing stopping you from doing that other than money.
Well, and that's a good place. I mean, what you're describing there of a collective of female artists sounds like something that could go under a nonprofit, and then they would qualify for grants.
Right. So I had the opportunity to investigate the nonprofit, and there's different tax structures for that, and there's different reasons for that. When you have a nonprofit, most times you have to have a mission too, and so you have to do some things for charities. You have to do some things, which is all doable. Just know what you're getting yourself into. Annabelle, you had a question.
Yes, Art Basel is on now in Miami, and many galleries have moved on to dropping no more brick and mortar, but itinerant exhibits such as all the satellites from Art Basel. So many are doing that, and they're charging for the wall space to artists. Mm-hmm. So that's another way, and we have previously discussed this with other groups, But that's something that with NAWA, I don't believe we have it yet, because with NAWA, we do have the brick and mortar in New York, and we do have all these juried exhibits throughout the United States where we are organizing, and we have the online. So I think we're still missing a venue such as this very important one that we have in December. So maybe some of us should get together and try to have a wall, have an exhibit space for NAWA for next year, and make it juried and see who will exhibit. I think that's one thing that we need to work on. It's important. Many collectors are coming to town at this time. And also, I want to add one more thing. Because I've been on the board at Broward Art Guild, I just left this year, but having a guild that you are a member and you are offered all these shows throughout the year, similar to NAWA, which most of them are juried. And then we also, I still conduct the art around town, and I take care of 2 locations, one at the university and one at the public library. So we're giving exposure to artists to have solo exhibits. So instead of having each artist go and knock at doors and it takes so much time, if you join a guild, you already have that automatically built in, and they will look for the venues for you, and you just have to tell them, I'm available and here's my work, but you have to have it ready for the show. So there's many, many ways to show your work and be out there. And that's all. So thank you very much for your presentation. It's amazing. Very informative.
I've done pop-up galleries, pop-up shows. I mean, for a while when Charleston was had some empty building space, we could rent out a space and do a show. And I think that's great for exposure. That's great if you have a following. But to get people to be curious about those spaces and pay for something, walk in there and pay for something, I don't think that's a construct that's happening yet. People like to be part of that art scene and go in and buy stuff and see stuff, but they don't necessarily want to buy stuff. And then if you've had to pay for that pop-up venue, that's an issue. I think as a goal for NAWA that we should be looking at higher end venues, pitching ideas to museums, because the artists that are our legacy are museum quality artists. We should be tapping into that. And when you're already at a college art gallery, already at a museum art gallery, you're appealing to people that theoretically are more educated, that are going there to see art because they know it's a commodity. There are a lot of people that just don't understand, like we do, that art is a necessity.
You know,
Susan, I've got a couple of things too. I think we do ourselves a disservice in a lot of our exhibitions where we don't explain process. I mean, I'm a sculptor, and it's probably, well, I mean, it's equally important because, people look at it, well, how did you do that? How did you envision that? It's in the round. And I look at paintings and all the materials, and it's like, this is crazy. It's a whole nother world. So that's one thing. Another thing, I was curious if there were problems or issues in your gallery in terms of dealing with sculpture. That's one. The other question is these whole online shows, whether they're really worth it. And it's certainly a problem for sculpture because you can't really get a sense of volume.
Right. So several questions in there. Yes, I had sculpture in my gallery. It was difficult because the shipping costs for that. I mean, I was on a ground level and there were no parking issues and there wasn't that kind of a thing, but I had the best luck with showing smaller portable sculptures. We had the pedestals for them. We had the display space for them. We had a lot of furniture in the gallery, so you could make it look like how this would fit in your home. I tried every angle for that. it's the shipping part. And South Carolina chapter's having the show at Brook Green Gardens, which is a sculpture place. And I think we're hearing that the artists are concerned about how they're going to ship a piece of sculpture there. I like to see the scale of a sculpture. I like to walk all around it because it's a sculpture. But I also feel that same way about a painting. I want to get up and see all the texture that's on a painting, all of the little nuances of things, all the stuff the artist embedded it. I got to see Jackson Pollock's paintings. I don't think he's the live all. I like Lee Krasner better, just saying. But to see Jackson Pollock's handprint in that painting, that's pretty cool. You can't see that online. You can only see that when you stand in line with 1,000 people to see the painting. So I'll never not want to be able to do that. But if your why is exposure, and I think the online shopping experience is something everybody's used to, and if we bridge the gap of the disconnect between the gallery and where people buy, then I think the online is not the worst thing. I think if you connect e-commerce to your website, that cuts out a lot of extra work and makes it one-stop shopping. You can sell off of Instagram. I think that's part of it. Jackie, you had another question in there, and I think I lost that. And then Lisa, I know you have a question too.
Well, it's the whole validity of these online shows. And yeah, I mean, the primary thing seems to be exposure. But on the other hand, it's also trying to figure out how to show sculpture. It's a real problem with these flat, dimensionality of things. So.
And if there was a way to incorporate some video in that online gallery, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a place for both, and you can work them together. Lisa, you had a question.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have two questions really quick. You had mentioned about the relationship with the gallery. If you say your why is that you want exposure first, and then possibly the financial, hopefully selling some of your work is what you're trying to do.
It's okay to sell our work out loud. Just
so
it's okay
if you're looking for the exposure, sometimes like my pieces are rather big, and I realized as I was starting to send things out for juried shows that there's certain standards. Is it okay to have a dialogue with the gallery before you show them the work and say, I am about to do another collection? Do you have standard sizes that you sell more often or that you would like to have in your gallery? Or is that unprofessional in the point of view from the artist? Am I thinking too much about them first before I think about it? But I thought that dialogue where you said that there's this reciprocal thing going on, would that be very helpful in letting them know that I understand their concerns for their needs?
I think that a dialogue is never a bad idea. I think that as an artist, you need to live your own truth, live your own mission. And if you work big, work big. If you go to a really tiny gallery, you may only be able to show one or two pieces. So that might not be the gallery for you. Or if you don't find the right gallery fit, maybe you have some smaller pieces that you would generate for that gallery, and then it draws people to your online presence, or it draws people to other places. I would ask questions of the gallery, but I wouldn't cater to them to the extent of you're going to change the body of your work or the way that you work, because that's who you are. And I don't think there's a person in the world that isn't going to make some space for you if you're selling. And it's a catch-22. It really is. But I would always err on the side of be true to yourself.
Okay, and then the second question was similar to it. When you showed that spreadsheet of like, here's where I keep, this is my itinerary, this is my my collection, and this is the size. Do you also put it in there on the idea that I'm probably going to give 30% to a gallery? Do you add it on up front just so that you know that, so you're not fluctuating your prices? or do you do, and also add in the shipping prior? Because like on average, you might send it out to two different shows and things like that. So how do you, I'm always, this has like always been an issue for me. Like, I don't want to fluctuate my prices, but I don't know how to keep that consistent.
So there are probably better authorities on this than me. So there's lots of information on the internet. There's lots of artists. Talk to some of your artist friends. We are a culture of people who don't talk about money in the way that we should talk about money. We need to get more comfortable about that. And I think that should be a whole nother workshop. I think that should be a whole nother book for Fran to write. And it should be a whole nother empowerment for women to say, it's okay for us to talk about women, to talk about, okay, for women to talk about money. We need to talk about money. We need to talk about it in terms, and we need to have almost a formula. You go to a restaurant, you pay a tip to the restaurant. Is that an antiquated system? Yes. Is that how we do things? Yes. Are the restaurants fighting back? Yes. They're putting in a prefigured tip on there. So it's happening. We need to be professional. That's my other big caveat. So you have a product. It costs X amount of dollars to make that product. There are fixed costs to doing business, your rent, your studio supplies, and then there's the general cost of running the business. I make myself a formula. Certain size painting is X amount of dollars. The next size up is X amount of dollars. I know right now I'm not charging enough for my artwork. I got to revisit that why, and I got to redo that. But I have a calculation, X amount of dollars per square foot for that painting. And I usually work in certain sizes anyway. I calculate the amount of time it takes me to do something, and I know how long it takes me to do something. And that figure came about when I sold my first, so backing up a little bit, when I first started out in the art world, I was a single parent. My price tag was a bag of groceries. And then when I moved away from my children, they were adults and they didn't need me anymore. It was a flight ticket to get to see them. Okay, that's where my why was. And then I started making it more of a business, and I started calculating, what does this really cost me? And the shipping was always factored in that to ship it one time. Then the shipping other times goes in a general category of shipping. So I use QuickBooks, and there's categories for all those things. So we talk about these online platforms to show our work, but the small investment in the QuickBooks program makes all of those questions fall into place. And there's a space to put general shipping and the cost of that exact product. And when you look at it in that framework, it helps to keep it organized. Come up with a calculation for you of what you put into that painting for the substrate, the materials. Pay yourself a salary. That's the first question, the first caveat of being self-employed. Pay yourself first. It's very hard to do, but what do you want to get out of that painting? That's a number. What's it going to cost to ship it? What's it going to cost to send it into a show? And come up with a number that feels right for that piece of artwork. When you sell that piece of artwork for that money and you know you can get it, then that's your new bottom line number. And you feel more confident about building it. You'll never sell a painting for anything less.
Yeah, I understood that the part about the cost of the thing. It was just like, if you're not in a gallery yet, should I anticipate that and add that on prior, just so that I know that I have that built in?
Anywhere you're selling it,
Yeah.
other than on the line, you're going to sell it at a NAWAFL show. There's a commission, so factor that into the price because that's part of the cost of doing business. So yes, in a word, yes. Factor that commission in now because you're going to pay it. Factor in
Correct. So I don't think maybe I should do that now.
I would have thought differently. I would have thought that your spreadsheet, when I looked at it, because it was pretty low, I was thinking that the spreadsheet represented your artist direct. And then you would have to and because the galleries want to know how much you want, right? And then they would put it on top of it.
And they'll discuss with you your price points are too high for my gallery or your price points are too low for my gallery. Right. And if the gallery says, hey, we want you, but your price points are too low, then well, there's an invitation to raise your prices too. But that's a little bit more rare of a situation. That sheet's old. and I didn't even look at the prices before I put it on there, and they're smaller pieces, I think, that are there. But I don't know how accurate that is at this particular point.
Yeah, there was a formula a while ago, about 10 years ago, so it might be outdated, but it used to be that if you were a beginner, it was $1 per square inch. If you were mid-level, then it was like $2 to $3 per square inch. And you do the square footage or whatever it is, square footage of your piece, and then
again,
$4 to $5 if you're a professional.
okay, but aren't we all professionals?
We are. I'm just saying that I think that was the way it was formulated. And then it made it easier to have somebody just say, okay, there's a good starting point. Now it's up to you how much you're going to actually go for. But that is the formula. I think there was a few different gallery people that have told me that, curators that told me to go by that. And then I just worked on that.
And that's a great way to start. Again, the square footage. But you have to really be reasonable, because if you look at the square footage down here where it says thank you on my slideshow, there's not a lot going on in there. But you look up here in the middle, and there's a lot more going on. And you look at somebody's sculpture, and how can they possibly charge by the square
I
footage?
have no idea about sculpture. Yeah.
So,
different material costs.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, if you charge, you charge yourself out of business.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always the problem for all of us, is that we never get the amount of money versus time you put into things. I mean, I remember speaking to one of my instructors way back when about, how you price sculpture. And he said, well, you start out, you take your foundry costs, and then you either double, triple it, or quadruple it, depending where you are in your career.
and how do you get from
the shipping costs have gone crazy. That's why I'm not even doing anymore.
Yeah.
How do you
And I think too, when you go into a gallery, you sort of have to make up your own mind about how much you want.
And that's where you find the gallery that, if you're finding a gallery or you're having a collective or a guild that's selling to tourists, and they're coming to buy a painting from Charleston, and you make paintings from Charleston. I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. And, they're going to go faster than the things that are more contemplative or cutting edge or different from what the mainstream art person knows. If you're making sculpture, I would love to have a piece of sculpture in my house. It's not in my budget. I'm not your market. I'm not the person you're selling it to, but the person that you're selling it to has got a different budget structure than me. So part of that is marketing, and part of that may not be a gallery being the best way. A museum that has a restaurant in it, a place that has a restaurant that wants to bring sculpture into it. This is where Maine has 1% for art. For every building they build, they have to put 1% art in. Companies that want to have the artwork that's at Pinnacle Partners is a bank that didn't want to just buy decorative art and get rid of it. They wanted to buy art that became an investment and an asset. So if someone acquires that bank, they get their assets too. So someone might want a piece of sculpture in a hotel, in a bank, and then it becomes part of the bargaining for that. So that might be more of a venue for you than a gallery, but only you can answer that question.
Oh.
But it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you something somewhere, and that's the cost of doing.
Well, I think that's why I was saying that when going in, you kind of have to determine sort of what's the minimum you can accept for yourself.
And once you know that, you won't go any lower. You can't go any lower, because that's your right to get what you deserve for that piece of artwork. You have a right to say, I put my heart and soul in this. Now, if you're trying to buy groceries for your kids, you might have to make some compromises. You might have to make some different kind of art just to keep the lights on. But if that's not your why is to make a damn good piece of sculpture that's going to last longer than you, then it changes everything. Like I said, I wish I had a magic wand. Judy, you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. Back to commissions. are continuing with commissions. And with regard to selling a piece, if does that gallery where that painting or that sculpture was displayed, is that commission due forevermore? What is the period of time that commission?
Let me make sure I understand your question. I put a piece of art in a gallery and I'm in a show. The show's over. Somebody saw the show and called the gallery 6 weeks later and said, I saw something at your gallery from that artist. She tracks me down. She wants to buy that piece of art. The gallerist wants to buy that piece of art from me for their customer. I owe them something for that.
Yes, of course.
Statute of limitations of when we agreed to in our contract is over, then it's over. The time frame that we had, and that's lucky for me and unlucky for them. And that happens, and that's why these NAWAFL shows are great, because you get to people look at your artwork 3, 4, 5 times before they actually buy something. If they're buying it too close to when you displayed it, then it would be nice to share. It's required that you share if your contract says you share. Then after a certain point, you have to, dig deep. So the problem in the art world too is that Taylor Swift writes a song, she sings that song. Anybody else that wants to, you see where I'm going with this, wants to sing that song, Taylor Swift gets a cut of it. I make a painting, somebody buys it for a ridiculously low price, a gallery gets a good chunk of it. That person buys the art and decides they just bought it on speculation. It's not even on display for their friends to look at. It's in a closet somewhere. They pull it out and resell it and triple their value because now I'm more famous. I don't get a cut of that. That's a problem in the art world.
But the good thing about that is that once you know it's gone for that much money, I always tell people if they sell it, just let me know how much they sold it for, because then that becomes my base price. If that's what is going value, then that's the going value.
All right.
And I have a certificate of authenticity that I put on the back of my painting, and who it was sold to, et cetera, et cetera. And the gallery is supposed to facilitate some of that for you, and that's important. But there should be a way where if it gets sold again, that the information comes back to you. But we're cut out of it. We're cut out of it because we were Van Gogh and we didn't know any better. We were women artists that didn't speak up for ourselves. We have the power to change that. I don't know all the answers to that. I wish I did. And that's a place where we could have another workshop, a discussion, and put our heads together on how that happens. Maybe Taylor Swift wants to come and teach us something.
Thank you for all of that.
Any other questions? Did we lose Fran Gardner?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, how we doing for time?
You're still okay. If anyone has any other questions, I mean, we should be winding it down soon.
Okay. So my last slide here is that it is my mission to do what I can do to share my sisters. So in the paintings, in the slides, I put a few of my own artwork in the back, but I stole your artwork and used it for my slideshow without your permission. Sorry, but they're here. Here's the names of the people who I pilfered from, because anytime I can shout out for another sister. So call this my bibliography, and you can see different people. And it was just in as they went in the original flow, and then I changed some of the slides around a little bit so it doesn't always flow. So there was no hierarchy to who I chose, but those are some women that I know, some women I want to meet, and I just love this Sean Farley sculpture about getting your ducks in a row and getting your things in order. And this one was the one down here, the Deborah Perlman was the one about listening. I just couldn't help myself with those two. And I didn't put Fran's name on here, for the slide I used of hers, because I would like to yield the last of my time to Fran to plug her book a little bit and the workshops that she does. I attended one last night with the New Pennsylvania chapter, and I feel like the big change in my career has been NAWA and the sisterhood I found there. I didn't know I needed sisterhood till I met Fran Gardner, and I was walking the walk and talking the talk, and some days not at the same time. But since I met Fran, a lot of things have come together for me, and her gem of a book has done that too. So if you don't have any more questions for me or the gallery, I would love to come back and do another talk with you about some of these other things, or come and listen to some talks about these other things. I will say goodbye. I'll still here, and I'll let Fran take over if that's all right with everybody.
Susan, I really want to thank you for this generous presentation about your knowledge and your work. And it's been a wonderful morning. And thank you all for tuning in. It's been so enjoyable, and we have learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very motivational.
I want to thank you all for participating, and Susan for giving us your time. We really appreciate it.
Well, hang on if you want to hear about Fran, and I appreciate everybody here. Truly, I do. And go NAWA.
I'll continue recording. So if Fran wants to start talking, that's great. Thank you very much.
Susan, thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time. This mirrors exactly what I saw in the Judy Chicago show in New York last year. She had the entire new museum, 4 floors of it, for her retrospective. And on one whole floor of her retrospective, she featured the art of other women, of the women that she felt like had contributed in some way to the way she made her art, or to her success in her art, or her mission, or her voice. That I can't stress enough how important that is. Artists get in galleries because other artists recommend them. So if you're in a gallery, recommend a sister whose work you think fits well in that space. I hear that all the time. I think that is one of the most important bits of information. My successes, if I can list my own successes, they usually come from having been recommended by another artist, and I think probably 100% of the time that was another female artist. So thank you, Susan, for mirroring that beautiful concept. I wrote this book, Artists Will Find a Way, the one that Susan so nicely and generously mentioned in her talk. I lead retreats, and I've been a university professor. I'm retired now, but I taught for 32 years in the university. What I put in this book was the most frequent comments that I got from artists in my retreats about the problems that they encountered in their studio work. Over self-criticism. How do I deal with the critic that sits on my shoulder? My work is all over the place. I love materials, and I love trying other things, and I love to go to workshops, but now my body of work doesn't have focus. How do I get focused? Those are the kinds of things that I put into this first book, and not only just the theoretical stuff about it, but some step-by-step guidance on how to work through those problems in your studio. So the book begins to act kind of like a studio assistant. So if you can identify a problem that you're having in the studio, you go look at the table of contents and you read the chapter that most or that best fits what the problem that you are encountering. I've been so gratified by the response that I've gotten from this book, from artists who say, I read through it when I first got it, and now I'm going back through it and I'm doing the work. Because that's what really takes our work deeper. I am within hours of sending my second book to my publisher for editing. I'm so close on the second book. And that second one, Susan, has a lot to do with what you're talking about here about the professionalism end of being an artist. There's a space between being in the studio and making the work and having the art in the gallery. There's a space there. That's your studio work too. That work that has to do with how to title your work in a way that makes sense and has consistency. How to write your artist statement. What is the difference between an artist statement and a bio? And how do I put those two things together? And what tense do I put it in? You know, all of those practical questions about getting the professionalism attached to your body of work that you're ready to present. If it doesn't have that piece, it has less of a chance of getting out in the world and sending the message that you want it to send to the audience that you want it to go to. So the second book is not about how do I get my work in a gallery. That's Susan's book to write. This book is about what are the things that you have to do in order to make your work have the best chance of reaching the folks that you want it to reach. So that book is to be released sometime in the spring. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for the end of March, which is the anniversary of my first book, and they become like a companion set. My bottom line in that second book is this is your studio work. Your studio work is writing your statement. It is writing your bio. It is keeping an inventory of your work. It is keeping a vita or an exhibition record that you can, you know, so you can show a gallery that you're, what the documentation is around what you've shown. It is about doing, your studio work is about doing that part of it so that beautiful body of work that you just completed can get out there into the world and reach people. Thank you, Susan. I very much appreciate you, my dear, and everybody here for letting me have just a couple of minutes. I appreciate that very much. And I'm through. If you want to ask questions, it's fine, or we're kind of getting long on time.
Thank you, ladies. It's really nice to learn from all of your experience and your sound advice. We really thank you.
I think the more we stick together, the more we will change the world, and we are the future. Yep. Regardless of what else happens, we need to keep making what we're making and doing what we're doing and connect all the dots so that we can go forward. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk, and I will look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much.
Kindly contact me and I'll schedule you for 2026. Thank you.
Is there anything else we'd like to say other than goodbye and thank you very much? Bye-bye.